Welcome to a live Bogosity podcast for the 8th of August, 2016, the podcast that's for tomorrow. This is your host, Shane Killian, and joining me today are Charles Thomas.
Hello.
And Chris Hangartner.
Guten Tag.
Charles and Chris together here at the same time, so it'll probably be a 3-hour podcast then. So.
No, I've been better.
Okay. You guys can control yourself.
Yeah.
So what's going on is yesterday was our first filming block for a short film I'm shooting, The Woods Talk. It's a short film that Heather and I actually wrote together. And if I had known the previous week that we were going to be doing that, because the previous week was the 5th Saturday and we don't do it on the 5th Saturday, but if I had known that that was going to happen, I would have done it that week and then taken this week off. But I didn't want to go without a podcast for 2 weeks in a row, but with all the scheduling and prep work, the only way it was happening this week was live and unedited, which has always worked out so wonderfully for us.
Yeah.
All right, so before we begin, let me just say that apparently a lot of you have not gone to audibletrial.com/Bogosity to get your free audiobook. Why? What part of free book do you people not understand? And it's not just any old crappy book. It's your choice from Audible's more than 180,000 audiobooks available. So go to audibletrial.com/Bogosity for your free audiobook.
Well, apparently they're going to get Glocks because, according to Obama, it's easier to get a Glock than a free audiobook.
Oh, is that it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, all the kids are out getting their Glocks.
All right, let's cognitize the news of the bogus. And speaking of what you were just saying about Glocks, you know how I always say that without guns you can't have mass killings? And we usually respond by showing examples of mass killings committed with knives, mass stabbings. Yep. Sadly, we've got another example, 19 people stabbed to death in Japan.
Oh, yeah. There was also that stabbing in the UK where one American tourist died.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was, 5 or 6, the death toll on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that just happened, so I didn't have time to
I know. As sad as it is, I will say this. I did say this to one of my friends who is somewhat for gun control. I said, how come no one's doing anything about knives? People don't need 10-inch military-style combat knives.
Exactly. It's the same thing, people. And I get what the rationale is. You get what the people are like. Hey, it's I want to make sure people say, like, so it's a criminal or crazy person doesn't get a gun or any type of dangerous weapons, you'll be less inclined to do the horrible and terrible things. But as we've seen there, reality shows if it's not guns, it's knives. It's not knives, it's crock pots. It's anything.
And if you ban them from buying it legally, they'll buy it illegally.
Exactly. So in fact, there was a recent report that most of Chicago, the one of the most horrible and violent places out there in the United States, most of the criminals don't buy the legal guns. They go with the legal guns. So again, even if you try to make it illegal, there is going to be a market for it, a black market, and they don't have any checks and balances there.
Oh yeah, just look at the LAPD's confiscation room. California is considered, the greatest state according to Brady, but the LAPD, they've got a whole locker full of AK-47s, machine guns, RPGs, and even grenades.
All stuff they've confiscated from criminals, yeah.
Yep.
Now, fair warning, everyone, if you go to the link in the show notes, there's another stupid autoplay video on another CNN page, so anyway. Those of you who missed the blooper a couple weeks ago, that's what it was. I had pulled up the link for the next page while I was talking with Albukshi, and it started auto-playing, and it got it on the audio, so we had to back up.
Yeah,
but anyway, what had happened was, according to Officer Satomi Kurihara of the Sagamihara Fire Department, 9 men and 10 women were stabbed to death, as well as 26 injuries, and this happened at the Tsukui Yamayuri Inn facility in Sagamihara. I got most of the Japanese right, but then I couldn't say facility. I don't know.
You got more right than me, Shane, because you'll be here like for 6 hours for me pronouncing one of those words.
I can't really speak Japanese, so...
Yeah. So it was committed by Satoshi Uematsu, no relation to Satoshi Nakamoto or Dorian Nakamoto or anyone like that, just so no one gets any ideas. He's 26
don't know who
years
those are.
old. The creator of Bitcoin.
Mm.
And then the guy they thought was the creator of Bitcoin, and they're harassing him.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So he's 26 years old, not the creator of Bitcoin, but this guy. And he apparently worked at the facility until like February. He turned himself in at 3 a.m. and turned in a blood-stained knife and a cloth that had also been soaked with blood. They don't know why he did it, but they ruled out any link with ISIS or other terror organizations. But once again, our news media is completely silent about it.
Oh, yeah.
10 people, 15 people get shot with guns, and they're all over it. And
unless it's the, it's the certain. If it fits a certain narrative, that's the thing. It always has to fit a narrative, and the one thing it's heartbreaking to see, and that's why you see the rise of all these crazy stuff that's going on in Europe is people. Heck, I mean, you talk to some people in Europe, like they didn't know who was the attacker. They have no idea. The media is not telling them. It is supposed to be the media's job is to inform the public. That is their main job, not to inform them on the pointless stuff like what Justin Bieber is doing or whatever type of pop celebrity is, saying something stupid on Twitter. The main job is to inform them on the real things and educate the people of their town, city, nation, and or what have you. But that's just my personal thing, and I could be just wrong and thinking of like the old way of doing things.
The truth is, almost all news medias, they have a political rhetoric, and they're either not gonna report the story, or if they do, they're gonna twist it around to fit their agenda. So that's a sad truth.
Now this story also mentions a couple other stabbing sprees in Japan. A 2001 stabbing where 8 children were killed in a school by a former janitor, and a 2008 stabbing of 18 people, 7 of which were killed. So again, this happens.
Yeah, and it's pretty funny because some of the anti-gun people like to say, "Yeah, but knives are less dangerous than guns." They're pretty dangerous. Here's the thing: you want to know how deep a knife just has to go before it pierces something vital? 3 inches. That's it.
Oh, less than that, depending on as the Klingons say, 1,000 throats may be slit in one night by a running man.
Yeah. It's dangerous. Heck, what about car crashes and such? Those things kill more than they have more deaths with car crashes and everything like that. Around 1 million in the U.S. I mean,
but the difference is cars aren't intended to kill people. You see, it's intentions that matter because then your bad mojo gets into the item and something.
Oh yeah, they always do that argument, especially because they always say, well, the difference between AR-15s and a Winchester 770 is that a Winchester is a hunting rifle, so it's got legitimate use, and AR-15's only made for military. Yeah, well, I own an old bolt-action Mauser rifle. That thing's not meant for hunting. It was meant for shooting at another enemy soldier.
And also, the assault rifle you mentioned is actually a weaker rifle than the other one, the Winchester.
Oh yeah,
and
besides, like I said, Charles Whitman, when he shot up a bunch of people, he didn't use a high-powered military capacity rifle. He used a bunch of hunting rifles he bought from a hunting store.
Yeah. And another thing is the clear causative dissidence of people who say private citizens shouldn't have guns, but yet the police and military should have, only the weapons should only be them. And, well, you see how that turns out with...
And double vote on points if they're with Black Lives Matter and complaining about cops killing black kids.
Yeah, and all these other situations, and yet they get a pass. I mean, it seems like if you wear a badge or any type of official thing by it reminds me of that experiment of I don't know what it was. It's like a person in a white lab coat telling the people there saying just press this button, and this person needs to be tell this person what shapes you. If he gets a mistake, you get
you're
electric.
talking about the Milgram experiment?
Yeah.
I think he was talking about the Milgram experiment.
Oh, okay.
Okay, he'll be back in a minute, I guess. I'll mute his mic till he gets back. His mic won't mute. Oh well. Bogosity.tv is a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates program. Amazon has lots of great stuff, don't they? I shop from there all the time, so next time you buy online, just clear your cookies and go to amazon.bogosity.tv, or if you want to pay with Bitcoin and get discounts of 20% or even more, go to purse.bogosity.tv. And you can also get $5 off right now off an order of $10 or more if you haven't used the Amazon mobile app in the last 12 months, or even if you've never used it, just go to get5.bogosity.tv. That's GET numeral 5.bogosity.tv. Okay, more from one of our most anti-science presidents ever. Barack Obama has signed a bill mandating labeling of GMO foods, and I think we've pretty much covered ad nauseum why that's fundamentally misleading.
Yep. Yeah, especially considering the fact that people have been genetically modifying foods for thousands of years. You know how a lot of people, used to do the whole crossbreeding thing? That's by definition genetic modification. Even the so-called quote-unquote organic foods are genetically modified.
Yeah, I mean, hybridization is just randomly throwing the genes into a pile and hoping for the best. And one thing that gets me is that a lot of organic growers are bombarding their seeds with radiation to make them mutate, hoping that some of them will have a beneficial mutation. That's okay, and GMO is what?
Yeah. Then of course you get like those pure organic sins that says, "Oh no, we're not for that type of organic. We mean pure organic, meaning you grow it in there and you do nothing except just water." And it's like, yeah, good luck with that because you're not going to last long. Because if you do that all naturally, your crop, almost if not all of your crop, is going to be destroyed within like a few months. I hate anti-GMO crop because here's the thing, I'm not a farmer, but a lot of my extended family is farming, and 99% of these anti-GMO people, they clearly have absolutely no idea about farming and agriculture.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't do these things because we're evil, greedy, and we want to poison you at the expense of the people and those poor animals. We're doing this because that's the best way we can get the cheapest high quality product for an amount of people.
Now, Hershey's jumped on this bandwagon a while back. They started using only cane sugar in the form of refined sucrose for the sweetener.
In the back, sorry.
Okay.
I had to do some things, but I'm here.
That's fine.
Yeah,
but
we're talking about GMOs.
They're now using cane sugar only as opposed to GMO sugar beet so they can put that GMO-free label on there. The thing is, there's no difference whatsoever. It's sucrose. The sucrose crystals are exactly the same. A GMO was used at some point along the way, but it's not like it's the exact same stuff that you're getting, molecule by molecule.
Oh yeah, a lot of people like to look at those labels and they like to say, "Oh, is this thing high in high fructose corn syrup and all that?" Yeah, and I like how one person pointed out, "Okay, here's the thing. What does high fructose corn syrup, sucrose, and dextrose have in common? They're all the same thing. They're just fancy words for sugar."
Yeah,
pretty much. There's still the high-calorie stuff that you really want to cut down on.
Yeah.
And the GMO situation is something that a lot of people, seem to be ignorant on because they're like, "Oh my God, it's going to kill us all." I'm like, no, it's not. GMOs are not going to hurt. They have not killed anyone. They have not done anyone any type of damage as much as we know. It's just
the mice. The mice grew all these big tumors.
Even though it's been.
You remember those?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Then it's revealed that first of all they didn't test enough of them to get a reliable study, and second of all they used mice that are genetically modified to grow tumors because they're used for testing cancer drugs.
Yeah, and they let them live like that. You're supposed to let them live, I think, 9 weeks, and then humanely euthanize them. And they just let them grow for I think like a year and a half until the tumors just got crazy, and then they went, "See,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel sorry for those poor mice because, like you said, they're only tested for a few months and then they're humanely euthanized, and they kept those poor things growing, long past, their date,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, what's this going to do except makes things more expensive? They're either going to have to switch over to organics, which is something like 3 times as expensive, or at the very least, they'll have to jump through all these hoops, making sure that they're labeling the product properly. And of course, every regulation increases the cost of doing business, and they don't have a choice. They have to pass that on to the consumer.
Shane, you guys are just saying that because you're in the pockets of Monsanto. We're being paid by Monsanto, and we're putting down those poor mom and pop $30 billion organic farming corporations.
If I'm being paid by Monsanto, then why am I telling you to clear your cookies and use our Amazon link, okay? If I'm getting the mad Monsanto money, I'm doing this for free. That's what this is.
Oh, yeah. If I was getting money from Monsanto or the Koch brothers or whatever evil group you want to blame, I wouldn't be living in my parents' basement. I'd be living in a mansion in De Pere.
Yeah, it's, to me, the entire GMO situation is based on fear. And again, another problem is that when you have these talking points, including the presidential candidates, Dr. Jill Stein, who is like so against GMOs.
We've got more on her later. She's far dumber than just the GMO stuff.
Yeah,
she wants to ban GMOs, not just label them.
And we'll call so. In fact, once you had, the GMOs are probably the most environmentally thing for our planet, because hey, GMOs do not have these farmers destroy countless wildlives. These all these type of things in the third world and stuff. For these farmers who have to go in and cut trees and cut the rainforest and all these type of deforestation plants, the GMOs actually can lessen that. And that's
And going back to farmers, for some reason, a lot of people who are anti-GMO like to say, what about all these farmers that are committing suicide? Why? First of all, I don't know what's going on. Second of all, what does a farmer's suicide have to do with that?
They actually commit suicide at a lower rate than the rest of the population, but they don't tell you that part. They just say millions of farmers committed suicide.
And here's another funny story that actually happened with anti-Monsanto people. There was one person that said, "Yeah, but did you know that there were these farmers in Europe that sued Monsanto because Monsanto's GMOs destroyed their crops?" I did a little research, and yes, Monsanto did have a lawsuit with some farmers, but it wasn't because of that. What happened was that because these farmers, they wanted to grow the GMO crops, and they did. They purchased them and grew them, but then Monsanto said, "Hey, you can't do that. You're infringing on our patent." So
there's a lot of patent stuff going on.
That's stupid of Monsanto's part, but it's not because of GMOs. It's because of stupid patent laws.
And that is another issue that we don't want to talk right now. So we don't want to make this to a 5-hour podcast.
I'm just gonna say this to all you statists out there. Only in a society run by a state can people patent genes that are naturally there.
Well, they can't do that anymore. At least in the U.S., the Supreme Court struck that down. At least.
And that's at least a good thing,
Right. Now, the Agricultural Department has 2 years to write the rules for this. And hopefully those rules will be, don't label anything. This whole idea is stupid, but I kind of doubt that. But you have anti-science senators Bernie Sanders and Patrick Leahy and Congressman Peter Welch who say that this doesn't go far enough because they want a big warning label to scare people. But this law allows it to just be an emblem, or they also say a code readable by a smartphone. I guess they mean a QR code, little thing where you can scan and it tells you that it has GMOs or something.
I think just like what you said with guns, I think these people personally, they want GMOs banned. They're going to do that. They want to deliberately do that so people will sue, and then they'll add more and more laws, and they'll say, you know what, these regulations aren't working. Let's just ban them all together and just deal with it.
Well, and mark my words, the next thing from this is going to be, well, if GMOs are harmless, why do they have to label them?
That will be...
Because you made us label them.
Yeah. Well, that's what they did with some aerosol and vaccines. Oh, if it's harmless, why do they take it out?
Yeah, same thing. Going back, this isn't with GMOs, but same thing with like some of the chemicals, like in like sodas, like for instance yellow number 5. People say that yellow number 5, in found in Mountain Dew, does all sorts of stuff to your body,
and when red dye 40,
yeah, and when you debunk that, they say, well, then how come it's labeled? It's only labeled because there's a very, very, very small percentage of the population that may have an allergic reaction to that chemical, and it's not even a major one. It just turns their skin a tinted color, and that's it.
Now, they're also complaining that there aren't enough penalties for companies that don't comply, even though the product is completely harmless. So apparently they really want to put the screws on people who don't put these big warning labels on there.
Mm-hmm. That's another issue. Again, it's like I said, it's about fear and fear of this whole. It's changing the paradigm, so it has to be this. So and then again, we get back to the whole vaccines and autism and such. It's the way it's not vaccines cause autism. It's not even close to that. It's because we know how to. Not only we can see what type of autism out there. I mean, again, we know how to. As far as going future, we're gonna see more kids have these things. It's and it's not again. They're treating it like it's an illness. Again, autism is not an illness.
No, it's a neurological disorder that affects your body, the brain's ability to social, and there's different forms of it. There's not an increase in autism because, as we pointed out multiple times, not because more people are quote unquote catching it. There's an increase because because every year psychologists are finding more versions of it, and we're getting better at diagnosing it. Whereas 100 years ago, if a kid was displaying signs of autism, he would have just been labeled either as a weird kid, or on the rare occasion, he would have been diagnosed as having what they call childhood schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is the sort of thing. I mean, there are unintended consequences. People, who are completely pro-science say, well, government should require labeling foods because we have the right to know what's in the food we're eating. Well, guess what? This is what politicians are going to do with it.
Yeah. Again, they don't know what a right is. A right is not an entitlement, people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the people of this country will learn the hard way, like they learned in many things, and they will continue to make the bad choice. But maybe, hopefully, they'll realize that maybe this way is not the.
And not to mention, and this has been brought up many times before, mostly with the drug market, but I think it can easily apply to food, is that if you create all these warning labels and all that, what's going to happen is that people are going to see this wall of text and they're going to say, you know what, just screw it. So that way, if they do have a legitimate allergy to an ingredient in the food, they're not going to read it. So when they eat it, they'll have an allergic reaction, and then of course the people are going to say, see, this is why we need to ban it. When the truth is, the reason why they ate it in the first place was because they didn't bother to read it because there was this wall of text. John also pointed this out. Have you seen, the warning label of a birth control pill? One
or
regular.
A ladder.
Yeah, or a ladder. I mean, you can make a small booklet out of the warning labels, and he points that out. He says, look at this. He says, look, this thing can cause, renal failure. It can cause chest problems. It can damage the woman's uterus. It can do all this stuff. It's yeah. And the guy was like, well, that rarely happens. Why do they do that? It's because people like you force them to do it. Because they're scared of those evil chemicals.
Yeah.
Oh no, this word has more than 10 letters in it. It must be toxic.
Mm-hmm. Once again, it all falls back on education, and how we doing with that? How we doing right now with our education system? But I think we already beat this topic to death.
Yeah.
Yeah, but one thing you should be scared of is using weak passwords, because they're the biggest vector for hackers to steal your data and even your identity. So go to password.bogosity.tv and get a free month of LastPass Premium. And even the free features of LastPass make it worth the effort. You randomly generate unique passwords for every site you visit. Very strong, very random, no hackers guessing them. LastPass will securely remember them all and put them in the login form for you, and it's all protected by a single master password, the last password you'll ever have to remember. So go to password.bogosity.tv and start generating secure passwords today.
You dotting that down, DOD? Yeah, people,
Yeah.
Department of Defense, you're not getting hacked because China has an elite army of cyber terrorists. You're getting hacked because your security system is crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another reason why Hillary just said, "Nah, I'll probably get my I'm gonna do this private myself." I wouldn't be surprised. She actually has like LastPass on her system. Like, hey, why not?
I'd be surprised if she knows what
I
LastPass
doubt
is.
she does.
Yeah, I mean, she was running this, in like her basement closet or something. For crying out loud, she had an internet printer hooked up to a public-facing IP address. I mean, no, security was not on this woman's mind.
Okay, well, what is the next story?
The next one is more DMCA Bogosity, although why it's DMCA Bogosity probably won't become evident for a few minutes, so just bear with me. But it has to do with the recent shutdown of the website Kick-Ass Torrents and the arrest of its founder, Artem Volin. According to Alexa, Kick-Ass Torrents was the 69th most visited website on the internet, 50 million unique visitors a month. According to the Department of Justice, that costs copyright holders millions of dollars because they're just as anti-science as their bullshitter-in-chief. And probably what was really happening, I think, is these companies were kind of eyeing that $17 million in advertising revenue that Kick-Ass Torrents was getting. Although notice that they do not themselves go and set up such a site. But, yep, shut it down, arrested its owner. And according to Richard Weber, chief of the IRS's Criminal Investigation Unit, quote, websites such as the one seized today brazenly facilitate all kinds of illegal commerce. God love how there's even a concept of illegal commerce, you know what I'm saying?
I'm pretty sure it's illegal because you made it illegal.
Yeah, circular reasoning there.
Yep.
And again, if you shut this down, there's like already. They're like, oh, don't worry, we already got our like 10, 15.
Pirate Bay, extra torrents.
All these other stuff. So, again, it's just basically like one of those like big drug busts that, and as the one like say, see, we stopped this person, but meanwhile, like 2 days later, the whole system's back up and running with another person in charge, or multiple people will have their thing in charge. So it's just a dog chasing the tail, and it just shows people like, well, we're doing something. It's a whole dog and pony show.
So he also said that these were financial crimes, and if he's convicted of all of that, Volin will face 5 years in prison for each count of criminal copyright infringement. I'm not sure what that means, but I have a feeling it might be like each individual link he gets 5 years, plus another 20 years for money laundering. I mean, it really sounds like they looked at that Ross Ulbricht trial and went, yeah, let's keep this ball rolling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not to mention, with this whole torrents thing, is I forgot that other guy's name. I think he was in charge of that one website that a few people used to do drug dealing, and even though he was nothing to it, and they gave him life. Yeah.
That was called. That was what I was talking about. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Let's give him a life sentence for a victimless crime.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's. It's like.
There's a piece of good news here because the guy who will be defending Volin is Ira Rothkin, and he's the same guy who defended Kim.com in the mega upload case that we were covering.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And Rothkin said, quote, it, meaning Kick-Ass Torrents, is a glorified set of hyperlinks, very much like you would get from a search engine like Google. This case of Kick-Ass Torrents, we're not able to find any cases, especially criminal cases, where a hyperlink was considered direct willful infringement. We believe that the U.S. case here is without merit, and ultimately the folks involved with that will win as a matter of law. In my view, without direct infringement, you can't have a criminal infringement. There are no content files on Kick-Ass Torrents. They're just linking information.
Yeah,
well, it won't stop them from trying and not solving the real issue, but they,
And I will say one of the biggest problems is, and I will say it's partially our fault ourselves, because a biggest problem is that every time we hear a case like this, and there's always YouTube, everyone always goes, oh, that evil, greedy corporation, we gotta punish them somehow. And yeah, the corporation gets punished, but here's the thing. The law is still in place, it's still in force, and there's nothing stopping another big media corporation from coming in and abusing it, and they'll often use the previous case as an excuse, saying, well, you gave Disney a free pass, why can't we get one? People, this isn't gonna go away unless you flat out say, you know what? It's not YouTube's fault. It's not Viacom's fault. It's the DMCA's fault. We gotta get rid of it.
And
well,
I'm
this
happy.
is just so far. This is just copyright in general. I'll get to the DMCA point in a minute, but Roth can also pointed out a catch-22 here. Quote,
Yep.
if the defense prevails, then the Department of Justice can point to this scenario to tell Congress there may be a need to update the criminal copyright laws. And, of course, if they win, that'll be precedent. And so no matter which way it goes, they'll worm it into going after more sites.
It kind of reminds me about like those rape cases where like every time like they take a rapist to trial and they find no evidence that the guy committed the rape and they say he's innocent, he's not guilty because there's no evidence, and then all the radical feminists say, oh no, the evil rapist got away. Yeah.
That's why we need more laws in our favor.
Yeah, it's like people. That's not how a law system works. A law, a proper justice system is you're 100% innocent unless you're proven guilty. And sadly, we're going away from that. We're going from the American model, which was the English model, which is you're innocent until proven guilty, to the Russian model, which is if you're innocent, then why are we talking to you?
Yeah.
Now, the part of this that has to do with the DMCA is something that the Wired article outright lied about. I don't know if they created the lie or if they're passing on a lie from the DOJ or what, but they said, quote, that the site had, quote, a tendency to dismiss valid copyright takedown requests. I've got links in the show notes showing that just isn't true. I've linked to a Torrent Freak article from 2012 showing that in May of that year alone, Kick-Ass Torrents removed over 19,000 torrent files in 1 month in response to DMCA requests. And they told Torrent Freak, quote, we are very serious about removing copyrighted content following DMCA requests. We have staff who review and process all incoming requests. On working days, the processing time of these requests never takes longer than several hours. And in case you're wondering if that changed, like maybe they got lax, I'm linking to another article from June the 1st of this year, just a few weeks before they were shut down, showing that they responded to a DMCA complaint by removing over 2,500 links from a single user, and that they had acted on this in a matter of minutes. And according to the uploader told Torrent Freak they were removed in 12 seconds.
Yep, they comply with your demands, and you still take them to trial.
It's like again with
the whole point of this, the whole point of the whole DMCA, file the complaint thing. And by the way, I've also linked the sites down, but I also linked to a page on the Wayback Machine where the Kick-Ass Torrents people explain this is how you make a DMCA request, and they really do hold you by the hand and take you through the whole process. And now they're not being accused of copyright infringement because of what they've done, but because of what their users have done. And the whole point of this, you make the DMCA request and then you take it down for 10 business days and all of that. The whole point of that is so the website can get safe harbor. Kick-Ass Torrents should have had safe harbor doing everything they were doing, but we see now it means nothing at all. By all accounts, Kick-Ass Torrents did everything right, and the government still went after them.
It's again like how Gaddafi got taken out. If you really look at that, if you like, when Libya, who basically opened the world, even though they did a lot of horrible things, Gaddafi was a dictator and did everything wrong, and I'm same as Saddam and everything. But once they opened up and situations like that, they got killed off, and see what happened. Everything just completely apart.
Gaddafi had been cooperating with the U.S. and was actually a pretty important ally in the war on terror, helping the U.S. go against all these terror groups and everything.
Yeah, war on the tactic. That's beautiful.
Same thing with Pakistan. Pakistan used to be our most valuable ally in the war of terrorism, but now they want nothing to do with us. And why was that? Probably having to do with something of bombing their villages without telling them ahead of time.
And I think doing DNA collection through a phony vaccination drive didn't really help things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another reason why the vaccinations in that area and how many children are going to get sick and possibly have life, altering injuries because of that as well, because of the U.S. thinks, that's
I think
beautiful
they're
right
only
there.
one of 2 countries left with polio epidemics.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's partially our fault, because after we did that, people are now afraid, well, how do we know this polio vaccine is really like a mind control serum?
Exactly. So
because we've tried stuff on that like them before. That's what happens. People. A lot of people like to say, well, how come these Middle Eastern countries aren't embracing modern science and all that? And that's partially because the United States, Russia, and all the others kind of scared them away from it.
Mm-hmm. But no one wants to talk about that. But back to the DMCA, it is again, I am happy for one thing that the people on YouTube, bigger YouTubers like say H3, I think Doug Walker, they are talking about the DMCA and talking about these issues, and that's actually a beautiful thing. And hopefully, with this awareness out there, people will actually say, you know what, maybe one day they'll say, we will call this law what as it is, and unconstitutional law, and hopefully get it up to the Supreme Court. And, by then, hopefully they'll get a knife justice in there or someone like that that actually is actually more liberty minded. I'm hoping against hope here, but it would be nice if they actually say, what the DMCA is, does not help people. It hurts people. It hurts liberty, and they just do away with it and have a system that, okay, if you are pirating, there is you can't upload straight episodes of episodes and stuff like that, like cartoons or whatever. But if you're doing what I do or what you do, Shane, more serious stuff, but me, I'm doing adding media clips or reviews or for a podcast or stuff like before reviews or educate or whatever, we won't get flagged, or we won't get our channels won't disappear. Because at the end of the day, that's the main that's the one thing, because I do not want to have my channel or any channel just poof gone. Their whole work, their freedom of expression, everything gone, because YouTube is so terrified about not only this country's DMCA's, but also everyone else's type of similar laws and such.
Yeah, and it's also important to protect all your online activity from prying eyes, whether it's strangers in the coffee shop, your ISP, or even your government. You really need to be using a VPN, so go to vpn.bogosity.tv and get BoxPN, a secure no-log VPN service starting at just $2.99 a month. That's vpn.bogosity.tv. And now it's time to waste our vote on this week's biggest bogon emitter. This week, Neil Purcell nominates one of our favoritist websites in the whole wide world of the World Wide Web, Salon.com.
Oh, joy. Where's the bleach?
Yeah. This time it's an article by Matthew Rosa for saying that this isn't the year to vote third party because there's too much at stake. Everyone should vote for Hillary instead.
Oh, wait, you're serious? Oh, is this the same thing as 2012 as in 2000?
And I'm pretty sure the Trump supporters are saying the exact same thing, And no joke, this happened to me because the only election I ever voted for, I think it was the 2012 one, I voted for Gary Johnson, and one person flat out said, "Dude, you idiot! You're the reason. People like you're the reason Obama got in power because he stole votes from Mitt Romney." And I just want to say, no, Mitt Romney lost the election because he was being a generic, cliche Republican candidate. I mean, I even went so far saying, look, say what you want about Rick Santorum, at least he stood a chance because at least he was saying something different. Granted, he was a crazy warmonger, but at least he was more vocal and open. He wasn't being like Mitt Romney, who was trying to still be conservative, but still try to play it safe and all that. And when people decide when people
it's great when you have moments like I had after the 2004 election when a friend of mine told me he had ended up voting for John Kerry, and I just kind of teasing him said, "Oh, so you wasted your vote?" And he just said, "Yeah." I was like, "Yeah, I got one."
It is, and it's hilarious about this. And by the way, Gary Johnson and Jill Stein are getting a lot of, regardless of what you think of them in the politics and everything else, they are getting a lot of the higher. They're getting right up there. I think Gary Johnson last time I checked is 13%, as I last saw nationwide. And You know, he's probably going to get a bump for his last CNN town hall, so he might actually get into the debates. And that's going to be something. I wonder if that article actually does talk about that a bit, or actually any type of useful dialogue to talk about this so-called serious topic.
I don't know if there's gonna be much of that in the cards, because one of the things he says is, quote, presidential elections aren't just about principles, they're about human lives.
Oh, joy.
Oh, yeah, because Trump and Hillary are totally pro-human life.
Yeah, just talk.
Principles are about how we know what's best for human lives.
This again. If you actually look at what the whole issue with Hillary and Trump, they're probably really crappy about human lives. Trump and his whole law and order, trying to go and torture people, saying we're going to go after terrorists, fam, like the goddamn mafia, which is like, well, let's be real, pretty much the U.S. military doing the same thing in the war on terror in that situation and such.
And Hillary wants to do the exact same thing as Trump is doing. She just wants to keep quiet about it.
Yeah, and disable Syria, because that works so well with Libya, Iraq.
Yep, Syria's the new Iraq. Yep, we're gonna overthrow Assad, which, to their defense, Assad's a bad person, but overthrowing him's not gonna make the situation in Syria even better.
Overthrowing him means supporting the rebels, and the rebels are Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and not the Muslim Brotherhood. Who's the other one? Is that their equivalent of the Muslim Brotherhood?
I don't know, but
again, and we'll be right here in the same old dance again, and then more innocent people are gonna have, and more innocent people are gonna be caught in the crossfire, and that's gonna start the whole ISIS terror thing come up, and more people in the West are gonna get, going to have these terrorist attacks. They're gonna be sitting there, and they're gonna be in a serious look in their face, gonna be like, why do they hate us?
Oh yeah. There's a classic example of, if you don't learn from history, you're going to repeat it. Let's take this far the way back. Let's not talk about Iraq, but let's go all the way back to World War I. A lot of people, like to look at, when I was in high school, we always had these kids, and our teachers were like, oh, why would people support such an evil man like Hitler? And once you later learned the true history, you find out, well, probably because the United States, France, and Britain were starving the Germans. They were starving them. They were taking their money, all their resources, and they kept telling them over and over again, you guys started World War I, you guys are the reason this world's fucked up, so you guys gotta pay for it. And a lot of Germans were sad, and they were angry, and finally Hitler came along and said, it's not our fault, it's their fault. They're deliberately bringing us down, and people voted for him because of that.
Yeah.
So
he says, quote, 4 years studying American history tends to affect how a person views contemporary political events, so I'm pretty boned up on history, and so is Chris, so we'll see how much this guy knows about history and current events as we go. Quote, if Hubert Humphrey or George McGovern had defeated Richard Nixon, America would have been spared the trauma of Watergate. Yeah, because no one else was doing it.
I tell this to people all the time with Nixon. I've actually heard people say this. Look, yes, Nixon committed a crime, but here's the thing. What he did, almost every single political candidate at that time was doing. The only difference between Nixon was that he was caught.
Yeah, he got caught. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
But I will say this about Nixon. He was the only one to go to China and start the dialogue.
I will say that,
And to be fair with our current president, if he actually opened the door for Iran as well, and to me, I think that would be actually more positive outlook. And I guarantee you, that with that deal with Iran will have a much more positive effect than a lot of people say it is.
I actually once saw this interesting alternate history story, which was about this guy, who really hated Nixon, and he wanted Robert Kennedy to win because this guy was, pro civil rights and all, and he felt Robert Kennedy would give, blacks, like the socialist utopia he wanted, and when he comes back to the present time, you know what he discovers? A nuclear wasteland. And why was that? Because Robert Kennedy refused to open doors with China and Iran, and the result is that he isolated America from those nations, and in the future, China and the United States became bitter enemies, which ultimately led to a war.
Yeah, and China was probably allying with Russia and stuff like that.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
say what you want about Nixon. One thing that he did was that he saw China split away from, the relationship with the Soviet Union, and he opened up with them. He didn't point fingers and say, "Ha ha, sucks to be you." No, he went over there and he said, "Hey, I heard you lost, you lost one of your buddies. If you want to, even though we don't agree with you politically, you can trade with us and all that," and that helped. That's the reason why, even though the United States and China are complete opposites political wise, we can stay and agree agree happily. Contrary to popular belief, I highly doubt the United States and China will ever go to war with each other because it won't benefit either side, and they know that.
Yeah, they trade too much with each other.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that right there is one of the benefits. I'll say, as always, you might hate free trade and everything else, and there's some issues, but I will say this: free trade has stopped more nuclear wars than any type of diplomacy or any type of person. Without the free trade and everything else, we would probably be in war. But yeah, and but back to this person's article, because I don't think
what he says next is quote. Had Jimmy Carter thwarted Ronald Reagan in 1980, we wouldn't have had weaker labor unions and thus rising income inequality over the past third of a century.
He does realize, now granted this was mostly a problem in the UK, but it was especially a problem in the United States. In the 60s and 70s, even under Nixon, labor unions were almighty and very powerful. I mean, especially in the UK. I mean, I remember hearing a story from guys who were old enough to live in the United States and the UK back, in the 70s, and they said in those days unions were so powerful politically wise that they literally could shut down an entire industry just because their employers wouldn't give them an extra 2 minutes on their lunch break.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would strike. Yeah, they would just strike and just shut everything down and basically make everyone miserable. A lot of people
is he forgetting that 1980 had what was it, 14% inflation and double-digit interest rates and the energy crisis and all of that.
Yeah. The energy crisis. Yeah, contrary to popular belief, the energy crisis was not caused by a shortage of oil. What happened was that there was a series of domestic and international events that caused the price of oil to increase. But the good old U.S. government under both Ford and later Carter said, "Oh, we don't want that. We don't want people to pay all this extra money for gas, so we're going to keep it artificially low." And what happened? Everyone rushed and filled giant tanks of oil, and by the time people came by, they said, "Where's the oil? We don't have any. We're all out."
Yep. Yeah, and again, well, with Reagan and such like that, there were, again, there was a lot of issues during that time. I think this person from Salon, he's like forgetting about the whole, little thing called the Cold War, that sort of thing, and there was a lot of, I don't think the Dukakis. By the way, I don't think he was going to win anyway, because wasn't there one of Reagan? In fact, Reagan was once upon a time a Democrat, right? And he just said the party left him. And he won, and then he won in a landslide. Didn't he win against? Was it the first one or the second one he won by landslide?
The second one against Mondale. Mondale only took 2 states, and I remember because he took, what was his home state, like Montana or something like that. And the other one he took was Washington D.C. And when they showed the map, D.C. didn't show up, so they had to have it flashing.
Yeah, and going back to Reagan, it's so funny about how everyone likes to blame it on Reagan out, saying Reaganomics was terrible because he followed the trickle-down policy and all that. I will say when it comes to economics,
there is no such thing as trickle-down economics. You will not find it in any text from any school of economics ever.
Yep. That's what our teacher taught us. They taught us, trickle-down theory economics, And second of all, and here's the thing, people like to say trickle-down economics is what free market economics is. Well, let's say even if it was that, it still involves government. The only difference is that government gives it to the top and hope it goes down. Both those quote-unquote theories are all about government intervention, and I tell that to people all the time. The trickle-down, not only is it not accepted by economics, it's not even a hands-off approach. It's just saying, okay, we're going to intervene in the economy. Just how do we intervene?
Yeah. By the way, Reagan actually did pretty well in the 1980s. He won electoral 489 to Carter's 49. So he basically dominated 80 and 84. Jeez, the Democrats were destroyed.
And again, it's another crush 22 because places like places like Salon and all that keep saying America doesn't have enough democracy. America doesn't have enough democracy, and then you say, but I'm sorry guys, but a lot of those candidates you don't like, they were democratically elected by a majority. Well, it failed that time.
Yeah. And here we are again, because again, you have people over the whole Brexit situation, which is a huge issue, and it's still going to be. Yet you have people, the young people, saying they should take away the rights of old people voting. They're like, the old people screwed us, so we should not have old people voting. I'm like, wow. They really just want that dictatorial control, don't they? They really want that.
Oh yeah. I know.
Yeah, I mean, check out what he says when you're talking about those kinds of elections, like the 2001 Gore versus Bush. Here's what he says, quote, "If only a few thousand voters in New Hampshire or Florida had voted for Al Gore instead of George W. Bush, we could have avoided the second Iraq War and had tax cuts that focused on families with children, college students, and aging parents instead of primarily benefiting the wealthy."
George Bush. That guy was terrible. He was the greatest deregulator, and everyone suffered because of it. Yeah, and the fact that the government spending, went up by 53% under the W. Bush administration. Yeah, but that's because he was spending it on the military and all that. Still government spending, and he increased spending for school and all that stuff. That's what people love to say. They love to say that Bush hated the poor and that he gave all the money to the military, when the fact is he gave just as much money to the welfare system and the educational system just as much as he did to the military.
Yeah, the whole No Child Left Behind.
Videos on my channel showing this. It was actually Bush's tax cuts that benefited the middle class more than the wealthy, and Obama's tax policy has been a bigger boon to the wealthy.
It's
exactly the opposite of how people are making it out to be.
It's no different than going back to how this guy obviously didn't learn from history. Another good example would be that everyone loves to say that Hoover destroyed the economy in 1929 and it was FDR that lifted us out. Here's the thing. Almost all of the New Deal policies originally started with Hoover, and it's not just me saying that. And it's not just me saying that. FDR's own advisors said that. Like one of his economic advisors saying, we didn't admit it at the time, but most, if not all, of the policies we implemented under the New Deal originally started under Hoover. He just got elected out before he could implement them.
FDR ran on a platform of free markets and said that
that is true. That is true. There was a meeting by the Mises Institute, and they showed some old 1929 stuff from the Hoover administration, and one thing that FDR said was that Hoover is leading America towards socialism. That's what he said.
It is. And the other thing, as far as the Iraq War was concerned, it was Bill Clinton's policy to just a lot of people don't know this, but it wasn't like nothing happened between whenever that was, 93, and when Bush invaded. Clinton continued to bomb Iraq that whole time, while in addition to doing things like the economic sanctions and all of that, and Gore campaigned on a platform of continuing that and continued aggression against Iraq. Bush campaigned on a platform of a humble policy and not going to war, and of course he ended up
a lot of people like to make fun of George Bush's father, but I will say one thing about George H.W. Bush is that when he first got involved in the first Persian Gulf War, the reason why the first Gulf War lasted only a month was because there were many die-hard military guys that says, no, we got to go to Baghdad and we got to overthrow Saddam Hussein, but Bush said, nope, the mission of the UN was to kick Iraq out of Kuwait. Iraq is out of Kuwait, let's leave it at that. And then Clinton came in and said, oh no, we're not doing enough, we got to do more. And then he got the United States involved in Iraq, and another thing that gets forgotten about is the Balkans. We got involved in the Balkans and all that. And
so if anything, if Al Gore had been elected, we might have been in a war with Iraq even sooner.
Oh yeah, and it's pretty funny because also going back to Clinton, a lot of people like to yell at Clinton saying, why didn't America get involved in Rwanda? So many people were getting slaughtered. Because here's the thing, something like that was going in Somalia, and the United States said, oh my God, all these poor people are getting massacred in Somalia, we got to do something. And you know what happened? We had Mogadishu.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what happened, people. Everything that, my friend Jason said this all the time. Look, as tragic as Rwanda is, the United States would have made the situation 10 times worse because everything that was happening in Rwanda was happening in Somalia, and the U.S. intervened in Somalia, and they just made the situation worse.
So as for reasons to vote for Hillary, he says, quote, her infrastructure plan will create billions of jobs while improving our nation's roads and bridges. Yeah, and what happens when the work on the roads and bridges are done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Obama tried that.
And it didn't really go according to plan. And I love the fact
we still have the lowest labor force participation rate since the 1970s.
And I also, you know what I really love about all this is that the editing out of what she's doing in Syria and Libya and everything else that's wrong.
Benghazi, that was briefly glossed over. What happened? Why isn't Benghazi being brought up? She completely messed that up.
What difference does it make? And meanwhile, everyone blames the video of innocent Muslims. They blame that. I'm like, seriously?
Yeah.
And
of course, you got the burn victims, saying that Bernie should have won, even though Bernie, publicly he says that he doesn't support this, but privately he doesn't keep his word. Like, for instance, publicly he says, oh, we're wasting tax money attacking these poor innocent Iraqis, yet if you actually study him, he approved of the Iraq War, and it wasn't that he was pressured. He personally approved of it.
Yeah, and the fact, you should look up Viv's video of Edgy Spinks. I recently did a collab with him with Tyler Preston 20, about questions questions black people have for social justice warriors. Cheap plug. But he actually talks about how Bernie is a social justice warrior warmonger. In fact, that he actually introduced a bill for his home state to actually build a warplane that is, so it will never fly. In fact, it's it can't do anything else. All it is basically is just a huge paperweight, and it costs billions of dollars.
Yeah, and again, because I study history a lot, and obviously Salon's not paying attention to history because. I don't care what I don't care what anyone tells me. This mentality that the left has always been pro-peace is not true. In fact, going back to World War I, a lot of history, popular history likes to say that it was these evil right-wing, capitalists / nationalists that wanted World War I. But what they don't tell you is that some of the biggest pushers for the war were the French Social Democrats, which were socialist parties. They thought that, Germany and Austria are these evil monarchies that are exploiting the poor workers of the Balkans and the Slavic people, and that they need to be stopped. The Social Democrats were some of the biggest pushers of the First War. In fact, most of the imperial powers at the time had Social Democrats in their parties, and they flat out said, we support continuing the First World War.
Yeah, and it's not a coincidence that all of that happened around the same time as the Bolshevik Revolution, because that was just when all that was getting going.
Oh yeah, in fact, going back to the old Bolsheviks, contrary to popular belief, the Bolsheviks were not anti-war. They merely used the war as an excuse to gain political power. The thing that people forget to realize is that the Bolsheviks, they betrayed the Russian people. They said, look, we're not going to radically change Russia. Here's what we'll do. We'll get into power. We'll introduce these reforms. And you know what? If you don't like our party, you can vote us out of office. Well, what happened? They took over. People didn't like them, and they voted for the Socialist Revolutionary Party, which was slightly different. And what did the Bolsheviks say? Nope. That doesn't count. That doesn't count. We're in charge. Nothing you can do.
So check this part out. Quote, last but certainly not least, the symbolic significance of her election would be an inspiration to the millions of women and girls who strive to realize their own professional dreams in this country.
If I was a woman, I would be offended by that because
I kind of wish Sarah had shown up so I could have asked her, what's it like to be pandered to like this?
Yeah,
I mean, seriously, that is to me.
Yeah, I'm sorry, girls, but Hillary Clinton is not the role model you should be doing with young girls, because basically if you're saying that little girls should look up to Hillary, you're basically saying, okay, little girls, if you make a mistake, hide it. If you get exposed, blame it on other people. That's what Hillary Clinton does. She's a crook.
And if you get in trouble, lie about it.
She's a liar. She's a crook. And whenever time she gets exposed, all she does is she points fingers and says, "It's not my fault. It's those evil Republicans that are damaging and tainting my reputation."
Otherwise, a politician for the most part.
I mean, heck,
heroes should never be politicians, and there are so many strong female heroes in real life and probably some in fiction as well. Seriously, I can name at least a couple of strong female characters or strong female people right about, like say Harriet Tubman. I would say look at her before you look anywhere near someone like Hillary Clinton or Rosa Parks.
Oh yeah, and going back to Rosa Parks, a lot of people love to say, "Oh, Rosa Parks was great. She made a conscious decision to stand up," and everyone likes to say that she was politically affiliated. No, Rosa Parks had stated over and over again throughout her life she was not inspired by any politicians. She just flat out said, "Look, I was tired. I was not going to get out of the bus and go to the back because I knew that they would just take off without me. So I just said, you know what? I'm tired, and you have two options. You can either just say screw the law and just take me home with everyone and ignore all the things and just get it over with, or you can call the cops and inconvenience yourself and your customers." And they chose the latter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That to me is true patriot. Yeah. That is true being a hero. It's just not. That's true being a hero, right there.
Yeah. And, I once saw a movie about Rosa Parks, and one thing I liked about the movie is that it showed that she wasn't exactly group. When she was, being told you had to go back, and they said if you don't leave the bus and enter through the back, we're gonna call the cops on you. She didn't say Black Power or anything. She just said, okay, you may do that then. Yeah. Yeah, and
now most of this guy's argument is, of course, how awful Trump would be. So you gotta love how Trump being horrible is an argument against voting for other people who aren't Trump. Don't
get me wrong. I hate Trump just as much as you do. In fact, I hate it whenever time I criticize, Bernie Sanders and Hillary. People say, "Oh no, it's an evil Trump supporter." No, I hate Trump just as much as you do. What I'm just saying is that just because one person is an asshole doesn't make the other person less of an asshole.
Exactly. You have to have principles. You have to follow them out. I mean, heck, I think Trump is probably one of the most completely demagogic, just a horrible, toxic. If you ever just point to say toxic masculinity, I know people don't like to say that. They say SJW. If you want to have someone say toxic masculinity, just point to Trump, and you know what? That's it, right there.
Yeah.
He's the real life version of Biff Tannen.
But if you want toxic femininity, you got to look at Hillary, because she is basically the role model that a lot of them, radical, third wave feminists secretly want to be. A woman, who can do whatever the hell she wants and not get away with it, because that's what Hillary does. She does really horrible things to people. She commits crimes, and yet she gets away with it because she's a politician.
Yep, it is again it's the no consequence fallacy. No consequence. There should be a fallacy on that. And there's just no consequences. And again, that's someone choosing not to. Like I said, look at the people, and I know maybe I'm coloring my senses with my pigmentation and such. Like I said, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, they knew the consequences of what they were doing, but they did them anyway because they knew in something we believed in they believed in something that will help their friends, families, or whatever. They believe in something that's right, and heck, sometimes it is going against, say, the state or what have you. Well, meanwhile, Hillary Clinton, who, there's so many skeletons in that closet, not just going from the recent stuff. We'd be here for 6 hours if we did. But continue on. Is there anything more? Maybe anything else for this salon? Maybe he can save himself. He can save himself.
Well, I don't think so, because he says, quote, "In an election where there is no substantive differences between the policies proposed by the Democrats and the Republicans, I would vote for a third-party candidate. But that's this election and every other one, too."
Here we are again. And, again, I don't think Gary Johnson is 100% perfect. I think there's some issues there, but I think he lines up with my views a lot closer than Trump or Hillary. And I won't begrudge someone who goes with Jill Stein. Just trust me, there's going to be a lot of stuff we're going to tear her apart soon. But again, I will not begrudge them for saying this is what I want. I think this is a candidate that I believe that we should look into. What am I? What did that? And then that's a good thing. That's the whole freedom of choice thing. And like I said, if you don't want to have this, then make all third parties, everything else illegal. Then.
It's kind of disgraceful about the United States, because here's the thing, and I've actually done some research. Out of all the United States presidents in the world, we have only had one president who was truly independent, and that was our first president.
Yep.
And that was because George Washington, and here's the thing, there were political parties trying to get George Washington on their side, but he flat out refused. In fact, I actually don't know if he did this, but I've actually heard that he actually wanted to forbid, registered members of a political party from entering politics. Like, you could still be funded and represented by a political party, but you couldn't, be a member of them, but it got shot down. He didn't like political parties.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, he felt they would turn into lobbying groups, which he was right, they are.
But then again, that's it's tribalism. Eventually, he says, in fact, funny thing is, and he says something about this in his final address. He said he warned. He said the continual mischiefs of the spirit of party, making it the interest and duty of rights people to discourage and restrain it. And he was saying something way back in like he said, this is going to be an issue, and yet, people again, you are going to have people political parties, but you'll never. He said, he's like, what? At the end of the day, people will choose this, like a sports team or a, this thing and that thing, like DC or Marvel, Coca, Pepsi, that sort of thing. It's more team-based, more tribalism, and all these type of things. And that's what's really killing this. Killing this is because we have to force ourselves to say, well, hold our nose and vote for the person. And I'm tired of holding my nose. I said that in 2012. I was done doing that. And I get weird looks. I always gonna get weird looks. But like, you know what? I'm done voting for lesser evil. And if more people in this country actually said, you know what? The heck with everyone else. I'm gonna vote for what I want. It may not be 100%, which I don't think it's impossible to have that. But I think we'll be in a better place. I'm not saying Gary Johnson's going to win, which is a hard thing, but, and we'll actually think if, I live in a blue state, Maryland, and just, just to see that, like, if I can just vote something to clear my conscience out and say this person is ready to go. This person I believe is, regardless of party, Republican or Democrat, from the Libertarian Party, Green Party, Constitutional Party, or whatever these parties are, put their names in there, put them out there, let them get a chance to, part of me wishes that they lowered it from 15% to 10% to actually have people have more of a chance to get into the debates. Would actually be more interesting to hear that other side. Will actually be something that most people would love to have, but instead of this, you have Salon.com saying, "Oh, it's evil. Vote for this person."
Yeah. You know what this kind of reminds me of is that I was reading this comic from the 90s. It was a comic series, and it does get a little political. And the writer of the comic is a really diehard leftist, and she went as so far as, because this was during the 90s, during the Clinton and elections and all that. She went as so far as saying, if you vote for Ross Perot or the Reform Party, you're basically voting for the Nazi Party.
Wow.
Yeah, because nothing says you're politically knowledgeable than Godwin's law.
So the Salon article concludes, quote, "Elections are about more than conflicting ideals. They're about the hundreds of millions of lives, both here and abroad, that will be shaped by who happens to occupy the Oval Office. Based on the facts of what Clinton and Trump would do in office, I cannot in good conscience vote against the interests of the people Clinton would help, or for that matter, disregard the lives of the people Trump would hurt." All right, let's be clear here. The only people Clinton is going to help are her cronies. And if you want to talk about people abroad, mostly she's going to drop bombs on them.
She's Yeah, I mean, that's just funny because, a lot of people like to hate on Trump, but guess what? Clinton is for bombing Syria. She's for cracking down on ISIS, and while she doesn't want to build a wall over America, she is all for tougher immigration controls. So I don't know what this guy's smoking.
We want to vote third party because we're forward thinking and we care about the lives of people.
I mean, look, yeah, we know that Gary Johnson or what was that guy's name? Ralph Nader. We know they're not going to win, but the whole point of voting for guys like that is to tell the Democrat and Republican Party, look, we're tired of you guys. You guys are little more than one and the same, just with different names, and we're tired of it. We're voting with someone else.
Yeah, and
that's why Ross Perot was kind of famous, even though he didn't win the election, was because he got like 19% of the popular vote, and that was pretty good for an independent candidate, and it was showing that people are kind of getting tired of it. We all know that deep down inside that the Democrats and the Republicans, they're the exact same. They're different colors, they have different animals for a mascot, but they tend to believe in the same thing.
Yeah, and that is going to, again, and I will not be surprised. And pardon me, maybe just as a try to sometimes some men I wouldn't be that let the world burn type guy. Maybe have Johnson does steal some votes from Clinton and have Trump somehow win, just to see this person just go have the complete implosion that he would have.
Yeah, here's actually a funny joke that a friend of mine's uncle once told me one time. He once told me a funny joke saying, look, the only difference between Democrats and Republicans is that Republicans are just Democrats that say a prayer in the morning.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So all that makes Salon.com this week's biggest bogon emitter.
Again.
Oh yeah.
Seriously, Salon. Are you trying to win the Idiot of the Year award again?
I think there should just be a separate one, so the dumbest salon pose, and then...
Yeah, silly things from Salon.
Yeah. And now it's time to beam a mind control ray into the brain of this week's... Did
anyone else hear the voice?
I heard it.
I'm just joking. Yeah.
And another presidential hopeful racks one up. This time, we've been talking about it all before. We've been promising it's been coming. Here it is. Jill Stein of the Green Party, who actually believes that Wi-Fi will cause brain cancer.
Cell phones, okay, all right, fine. I can somehow wrap my brain around saying that, but...
How can you wrap your brain? Cell phones use even longer frequencies than wireless.
Yeah, I can see some people believe in that. I can see some people believe in that type of thing, and I'm like, fine. But Wi-Fi? Something that I have... We have Wi-Fi right now. I have Wi-Fi around my home, and I don't feel any cancer or any type of power or anything else. Seriously, it seems like she just reads from the, how to get she gets the science text from comic books, but then I don't even think comic books should be that silly.
The comic books I read have better science than this. So she said, quote, she said, quote, we should not be subjecting kids' brains especially to that. And we don't follow this issue in our country, but in Europe where they do, they have good precautions about wireless. Maybe not good enough, It's very hard to study this stuff, maybe for her. We make guinea pigs out of whole populations, and then we discover how many die. And this is the paradigm for how public health works in this country.
Yeah, here's the thing what she says. All these people are dying. Here's the number one question that a lot of those radical environmentalists can never answer. They always say, oh, global warming is going to kill us all. It's causing people to die of heat stroke in the winter areas. It's causing people to die of cancer and preventable diseases. Ask them this. Okay, then, where are the bodies?
Yeah. Potato.
Yeah, the global warming washed them away. Yeah,
so let's make sure we get a proper perspective on Jill Stein. She wants to not label GMOs but ban them. She wants to get rid of nuclear energy, which is by far the most environmentally friendly form of energy there is.
Yeah.
She's even an anti-vaxxer, going on about how harmful vaccines are. And now she also thinks that very weak radio waves with a wavelength of 12.5 centimeters can somehow, that's about what, that long I guess, can somehow do damage to 27 micron brain cells and even to a 1 nanometer DNA-based payload.
Penn and Teller's bullshit debunked this. There was they were doing like an episode on alternative medicine and all that, and a guy was like selling this thing that says it's going to protect your brain from radio waves and all that, and they said, look, the reason why radio waves can't cause cancer and all that is because they're too big. In order for it to cause cancer, it needs to penetrate your cells and then scramble up your atoms by making them, cling around, and that messes up your system and basically causes tumors. But radio waves, Wi-Fi, microwaves, they can't do that.
Yeah, they don't work on things that small. And between those wavelengths and the ionizing wavelengths that you have to do that is the entire visible light spectrum. So this CFL that I have up here in this light that's beaming down really brightly on my massive forehead is far more dangerous and is far more likely to give me cancer than all the Wi-Fi and my cell phones and everything else I have around here.
Yeah, it's more chemo and radiophobia. If it has the words radiation in it, oh my God, it's bad. Even though there's different types of radiation. In fact, there's actually been studies which have shown that some radiation is actually good for you.
I actually loved, back when I was really going after the moon hoaxers, there was this one fairly regular commenter I had who would always ask them the question. It's like, okay, because they were talking about like the radiation of the Van Allen belts. It's like, okay, what are the 3 types of radiation and how do you shield against them? And if you can't answer that, then I don't want to hear anything you say about radiation.
Yeah, again, it's again the
you answer them.
Jill Stein, who, I mean, I understand a lot of people like her. I mean, Corner Arrest seems to like her, and she's like, she has some issues of some people, she might have some points and some issues in some things. She sounds rational in some issues, but the GMOs should be banned. You have this Wi-Fi craziness and others. And banning nuclear energy. It doesn't make any logical sense. It would set this country so backwards that, I mean, I don't think this country would actually survive under Jill Stein. I mean, heck, I don't want to say this, but I honestly think Trump would be a better president than her. And that's saying a lot.
Here's the situation. Hillary is anti-science, Trump is anti-science, and Stein is incredibly anti-science. So really about the only presidential candidate with any real regard for science, for all his faults, is Gary Johnson.
Yeah.
And has the most experience too as being the governor. And
even Ron Paul. I remember reading this interesting article about Ron Paul. They asked him, "What's Ron Paul? What is your stance on evolution?" And you know what he said? He says, "Well, as a religious guy, I don't 100% believe in it. But then again, I'm not a scientist, so that's not my call."
Yeah, he just says right there. He's like, you know what? I'm not. It's not my arena.
I'm not a scientist. I'm a politician, and before that, I was an obstetrician. I'm not an evolutionary biologist, so that's not my level. And you know what? As you pointed out on one of your videos, Shane, it's okay to say that. The dumbest argument I always hear for UFOs and all that, it says, "Well, can you explain it?" No. Well, then it must be a UFO. Yeah. How do you know that? If I see like a bright weird object in the sky and it's something that I'm not familiar with, well, you know what? I'm just going to assume that it's probably some astrological, event that I'm not familiar with,
Astrological event, excuse me?
Astronomical. I always get those two terms confused. I mean, astronomical. It's just, that's what I tell people all the time, if you don't know something, that's no reason to act on it. As that one guy from the Atheist Channel flat out said, you do not legalize something until you're sure that it's safe. You let something happen, and you only take action only if there's a reason to do so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right now, with GMOs, we've been feeding them to a lot of people. It's been helping. It's been improving the health of a lot of people, and we are not seeing this massive calamity that these people are predicting. Okay, look, if GMOs were causing people to die from cancer, then I could understand investigating, but the truth is we're not seeing that,
Yep.
It's the
And you know,
boogeyman. They
and it's
want
pretty, and
something to fear.
it's pretty funny because when you point that out, you say, I mean, we've been feeding these people GMOs and they're not bad. It's like, yeah, but you're only looking at the short term. What about the long term? Well, it's kind of difficult to measure that, so maybe we should just let it go. And yes, if something in the long term does pop up, then maybe we can take action and admit we're wrong. But that's not how science works, you know.
Like you were saying earlier, there's nothing fundamentally different with GMO and what's been going on for hundreds of years, except it's more precise.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And no one wants to go into that issue. No one wants to talk about that. And until until people want to say a real hard science look, instead of just saying we just want a label, and then next time, see that label, that means bad or whatever. It just doesn't make any sense. And even still, there's no evidence. Again, no evidence that GMOs causes any type of health effects. There's no evidence of nuclear energy. I mean, okay, there's evidence that nuclear energy, when they get out of containment, that's stuff like Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island and all this type of stuff. But for the most
newer designs take care of that.
Yeah, but there are things that you can take care of and move on. I mean, heck, you look at again, I think nuclear energy is something we should be doing. We should be building more nuclear energy plants, and it's something that I think would actually be more safer and more again environmentally friendly. Until solar and wind actually pick up, or geothermal comes into play maybe on the next 10, 15, 20 years. And after that, you have this whole Wi-Fi thing. I don't know if she's actually trolling at this point, because if she was trolling, I can say, okay, I get that. But at this point, I don't know this to me just sounds completely insane.
So all of that makes Jill Stein this week's So that wraps up this. If you were traveling through outer space, like you're going real fast, like the speed of light, and all of a sudden you started screaming, ah, ah, do you think that your brain would blow up? Edition of the Bogosity podcast. Come join the discussion at forum.bogosity.tv, and feel free to join in like Neil Purcell did by sending a question, statement, news article, or rant in text or audio to podcast@bogosity.tv. This podcast depends on you to keep going, so please donate using the links on the website or the QR codes in the video thumbnail, or become a patron at patreon.bogosity.tv and get the podcast and YouTube videos early and without ads or promos. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Charles Thomas and Chris Hangartner for joining me.
Hello and goodbye.
I think Chris might be out for a second, but we should be back to normal podcasts next week. We'll probably have a few more cancellations as we get more and more shooting dates, but I should know about these ahead of time to let you know that ahead of time that there won't be a podcast that week. So until next time, here's a quote from E.O. Wilson. Political ideology can corrupt the mind and science. The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License.
All right, that's it. I got some things I gotta do.
All right.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
Thanks again.
And have a good time shooting, and hopefully the movie gets an Oscar or something.
Oh, thanks.
All right, peace.